This episode of Navel Gazing is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you. Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org, an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day.
Hey, it's Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indies podcast. Today is Wednesday, July 25th. My guest is Dino Verrelli, Beacon Falls resident who is the founder and CEO of Project Purple. That's a nonprofit group that raises money for pancreatic cancer research, and it also raises money to help people, to provide financial aid to people who have been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Dino's dad passed away from the disease. He talks about all they do to raise money. They've become basically $1 million charity born in Beacon Falls and now located in Seymour, and how he travels around the country to raise money for a cause that's very close to his heart. Also, they have, now that they've moved to Seymour, back in April, they moved to 115 Main Street in Seymour. They have some community events coming up. In October 27th, they're having a food truck fundraiser. They'll have something like 6 or 7 different food trucks, and that's a great food truck fundraiser, October 27th. But prior to that, starting actually on Friday, July 27th, they're going to have Food Truck Fridays in downtown Seymour. This Friday, they're going to have an egg truck. Kados egg truck, I apologize if I'm butchering that, will be at 115 Main Street parking lot, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday, July 27th, with additional food trucks August 24th and September 28th. In addition, Project Purple is having a shred event. So Ethan Fry is going to unload all his scandalous notebooks on goings-on in Seymour and Shelton this Saturday. That's from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., 115 Main Street, Project Purple. Minimum donation they're asking for is $10 per box, according to information I received. $10 donation per box, and also Bill's Grill, a food truck from Fairfield, will be selling sandwiches at the event. Okay, follow us on Twitter at Valley Indy. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and visit valleyndy.org. As always, for more info. Without further ado, here is Dino Verrelli. Hello, Dino. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate all you guys. Appreciate what you guys do for allowing us to tell our story and to a wider, broader audience. So appreciate it, Jim.
Yeah, no problem. So you're the founder and CEO of Project Purple, and that's a nonprofit organization that raises money for pancreatic cancer research and provides financial aid to some people with pancreatic cancer. Is that correct? Is that a summary of the nonprofit?
You hit the nail right on top of the head, as they say. Yeah, that's absolutely what we do, and we've become the country's leading provider of patient aid in the pancreatic cancer space, and we are trying to fund as much research as possible towards a cure or early detection test of the disease.
And one of the things, I mean, we're a local news site, we're hyper-local, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've built a nonprofit and we just stated your mission there. Just since 2011, that's become it has a national profile at this point. Where are you right now?
Where am I physically right now, or where are we as an organization?
I meant no, physically, because you're. I mean, here, spoiler alert. I heard you're in Chicago for a marathon or a 5K, or what do you? Where are you? Where are you calling from?
Well, I am in Chicago currently doing some work, and part of, I guess, the role of founder and CEO. One of the things that I do quite often. As this has grown, and as you said, I mean, we have become one of the leading organizations in the country and in the world, which is pretty wild. I don't get excited about many things, and not that I'm excited about that because we're not saving anyone's life yet, but it's been a lot of hard work, and hard work does pay off. And so I'm in Chicago for a bunch of engagement with our Chicago Marathon. We also this year launched a 5K run walk series strategically throughout the country, and Chicago is one of the destinations, and we have an event here in August that we have a 5K in the Chicagoland area, as they call it. So just right outside of Chicago City proper. It's in the next city over, which is called Park Ridge. So I'm in town doing a bunch of engagement for that. And then this year, part of our research portfolio, we invested in the University of Chicago Medical Center, which is one of the top centers here in the Midwest for the disease. And so I also have some follow-up meetings with the team here and see how things are progressing and making sure that our goals are met with the investment that we've made, and also see what else we can be doing to help the researchers and the doctors and the scientists to further clinical trials and further the research on pancreatic cancer.
And let's talk about I'm sorry.
It's multifaceted why I'm here. There's a variety of reasons why I came to Chicago this time.
And the fundraising for the organization primarily comes through these marathons, half marathons, and 5Ks. It's sort of a different way to raise money for this nonprofit that was born here in the Naugatuck Valley and has grown to national prominence. How did you come up with this idea to use running events to raise money? And how do you do that, essentially?
Well, you got to run. No,
I do not do that, Dino. I'm like 300 pounds.
No. And I mean, well, it's evolved, Eugene. And, the one thing is that, the story goes, at least for us and for me, when my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I was never a runner. I actually hated running. I was a collegiate athlete. I played college basketball in college and was what I thought in shape and active. But then when my dad got sick, I just dealt with that reality, and I had my own financial services business at the time. I had 2 young kids, so I had a lot of stuff going on, and I just started to run. A friend had, said, hey, let's just go for a 1 mile run. And I just felt so empowered from that 1 mile that first time, and I felt so good about it. And, things started to click. I started to run more, and being an entrepreneur, I also started to look at the pancreatic cancer space. My mom is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and we had done some stuff with Susan G. Komen. And, I think we did a walk back in the early 2000s. And, I just looked at the space, and no one was really using running the way I envisioned it. Our running portfolio, or our endurance portfolios, very diverse now. We started out running marathons and half marathons.
But let me just interrupt you, though, Dino, because I'm an ignoramus. How does running and doing these marathons translate into money for the nonprofit? That's what I don't understand.
So we are an official marathon charity partner with 20 different road races throughout the country. And some of these races are the biggest in the country, i.e. New York City Marathon, which is the biggest marathon in the country. The Chicago Marathon is the second biggest. Actually, the New York City Marathon is the biggest marathon in the world. And Chicago is the third biggest in the world, and it's number 2 in the country. So there's a process. And all these marathons, most of the marathons, half marathons throughout the country, have some sort of charity component. And so us as the charity, we apply, we have a process. Runners, typically with some of these races like New York, is a lottery system. So there's a couple ways to run the New York Marathon. You either are fast enough, which is a very small population, that you qualify with a qualifying time. You get in via the lottery, which is a difficult process in itself, or you run via charity. And the New York Marathon has 317 charities. A lot of them are based locally in the New York tri-state area, and some of them are national. But what we do with the New York Marathon, and I'll use them as an example, we provide access to the race, and in turn, our participants have to fundraise a certain amount of money.
Okay.
But we provide fundraising assistance. We have a fundraising coach in-house that works with every runner to ensure that they meet their goals, whatever their goal may be. We do have a minimum, and that's set by the race, that we have to ensure that our runners raise. And so basically we are providing entry into the race. In turn, the participants are fundraising for us. So they become active kind of participants in our fundraising program. And, it's similar, Eugene, to, it is non-traditional in the sense when you think of fundraising for charity, you go to a gala and you buy a $100 ticket, and then you go there and maybe you buy another $100 in raffle tickets, and that's how I think charity has been done in the past, and the endurance space using marathons and other things, has just kind of been an evolution. And, it's happened really over the last 10 years, maybe 15 years. I mean, I know Team and Training was really the first charity to really do this and do it well. And they started 30 years ago. So it's not something that's brand new. But I think there's been a tremendous amount of growth in the last 10 years in these programs and in these races.
And it's certainly clicked with Project Purple because from what I see, we're talking about $1 million operation here before your expenses, and only since you've launched in 2011, which is pretty incredible. Not that I'm any kind of numbers guy, but that's amazing.
Yeah, we just surpassed 4 million since inception just this year, and we're on pace this year for another $1 million year, which is consecutive with the last 2 years. And so we really have embraced the endurance, and I like to use the word endurance than running, Eugene, because now we're involved in CrossFit, and we've been doing that for the last 4 years. This is our 4th year, and then this year in the fall we'll be launching an indoor cycling series. Strategically in a couple of markets across the country that we have a very good following, and we want it to be successful. So we're trying that. And then this year we also launched our own 5K series. So we have already done 2. We had one in Norwalk in the spring. We had one in Nebraska in June, and then we'll have one here in Chicago in August. So we are getting into putting on our own events. And those are more participant-driven, not necessarily, there is a lot of fundraising that goes involved, but, it's more participant. And we also have been really successful working with some of our corporate sponsors in those strategic areas, since we have such a large following in those areas.
And then you've used this money from fundraising for research grants, $200,000 to the University of Nebraska Foundation, $150,000 to the University of Texas, just to name a few. And
MD
that's
Anderson,
got. Yeah. Go ahead. What'd you say?
That's MD Anderson. Yep.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And then, is there any type of project that you funded or a research project that's happening that particularly stands out? That one that really sort of piqued your interest as, wow, that's fascinating what they're doing there?
I think they all are, quite honestly. And I mean, our research philosophy has been to work with some of the best centers in the country. In this disease, it's a little bit different. And for those listening at home, and if you have been diagnosed recently or have a family member, what I would recommend is you go to a major center. Going to a small regional hospital that doesn't specialize in this disease is not going to do you any good. There are probably 10 to 15 centers nationwide that are really equipped from top bottom. And what I mean by that is they have the research component, they have the medical oncologists who actually administer the chemotherapy, and then they have the surgical part. So like if you are surgical, which only 1 in 5 of this disease are eligible for surgery, you have a surgeon that this is all he does. He doesn't dabble in, other cancers, or he isn't just a general surgeon. And that's really critical, Eugene, because what we have seen, and this is not Project Purple, but what we have seen in this space, And, we've become a leader here in the country. So, we work with some of the leading scientists and doctors, and the data is out there that if patients go to these major centers, they benefit tremendously because they get expertise in managing the disease. They potentially get into clinical trials. They get potentially surgeries that would be done at a major center that wouldn't be done at a regional center with a generalist. So, and that's really critical to the disease because, we're talking about providing months, not years of extra life. And for someone who has this terminal cancer, that is a huge difference. 2 extra months of someone's life could mean a lot to them from a family perspective, but also there's so much that's happening that potentially the longer you stay in this fight, potentially there's going to be something groundbreaking that may benefit you as a patient and may be a game changer. It may provide another year or 2 years or 3 years, or it may be the thing that makes a difference in battling this disease so that you can manage the disease for the rest of your life. May not cure you. And I think, we're not naive to the sense that we are trying to find a cure. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Don't get me wrong. But the reality is that the longer that we can have people live with the disease and manage life and have good quality of life, that's really what we're trying to do, right now, because I think the cure is just so far, away. And I think it's kind of naive to say like, hey, we're going to cure cancer. We want to manage this cancer. We want an early detection piece that other cancers have so that we get the cancer so early that we can, give people, 10 years extra life or 20 years extra life because we found it so early and we can manage that disease.
Hi, this is Eugene Driscoll, most likely interrupting myself to bring you a message from our sponsor, valleygivesback.org. Adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes mattered to you. Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org, an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org. And then in terms of Project Purple, research, obviously important, one of the pillars of the nonprofit, but then you also provide, or the Project Purple provides, direct financial aid to people who have pancreatic cancer. What is the type of support that Project Purple gives out, and how do you decide who to help?
That's a great question. So, and I'll just piggyback. Last year, we granted over $104,000. So we paid out grants to 116 families nationwide, and it equaled 104,000. So the process is, if you are fighting pancreatic cancer and you are currently in treatment, and you can apply for assistance grant via our patient financial aid program. We have 4 criteria that we provide aid for, and that breaks down from utilities to housing, which could be mortgage or rent, and medical, which could be copay insurance, or it could be involved in treatment, and then there's a miscellaneous. And so we have an application that is online, and we can fax and mail, but patients can fill this out online at our website. And we do require some information from the doctor, from the family, providing tax information, insurance information, copies of bills. And the great thing about this, Eugene, is if someone meets the criteria, and I would tell you 98% of the people that apply meet the criteria, they receive some sort of aid. Now, the hard reality is we can't eliminate debt. And the other hard reality is just because you have cancer doesn't mean that your bills stop, right? There's no, companies just don't stop sending, bills because you have cancer, and in particular terminal cancer. So we do work with other like-minded groups, a couple that are in our space, and then a couple that are just national groups providing aid to all cancer patients. So our goal is we provide some assistance. Again, we're not able to pay everyone's bills off, but hopefully for that month, the patient doesn't have to worry about maybe their medical copay or their rent or their mortgage payment. And then the hope is that they can reach out to one of the other groups that we provide and get more assistance from them. And so that, they get another month or 2 months of aid where, again, they can focus on their care and not necessarily worry about, having to go to work or having to find money, whether it's savings or investments to, pay for their treatment. And so that's the ultimate goal. I think when we started the foundation, that was a pillar from the very beginning. And I think in the beginning, there were less people requesting, aid. So it was a lot easier. The payouts were a lot higher because the demand wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we have, I think, 60 patients in our queue. And our turnaround process is about 2 weeks. So we do vet everyone out, and that's something that we have to do. We don't pay patients direct. We pay lenders and debtors. And sometimes, people don't get us all the proper information. So like their case will basically sit in the pending queue because we have to wait for them to provide the appropriate information so that we can vet them out. And then internally we have a vetting out process. We've created an algorithm that works really well. And the ultimate goal is to help the people that are the sickest, that have the biggest need. And, that is determined by an internal formula that we have, an internal algorithm that we look at to determine, how do we look at someone who's stage 1 to stage 4 and, someone who has an income or had an income of, $200,000 versus someone who has an income of $30,000 or $10,000. It's really sad, I will say. With the, cancer doesn't discriminate, right? But we are helping as many people as humanly possible that we can that are battling the disease. But, it's really sad, that, there are people that really need the assistance. For our listeners at home, you're sitting in your car, or you're listening to this at your home, listening on your computer. There's a lot of people out there that don't have a lot of the basic necessities of just life that are battling cancer.
Yeah, the stress must be incredible there. What about the organizational structure of Project Purple? You're saying we. How many employees do you have? I know you have a board of directors. How many people are involved? Because it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. So we have 8 board of directors, and those are made up of 8 amazing individuals that volunteer all their time to Project Purple to help guide the ship. And then we have internally, we have 3 full-time people, including myself. I gave up my financial services business about 2 years ago. The board had asked me, up until 2 years ago, I was running 2 businesses and having a young family. So I no longer do my insurance business, and I'm full-time Project Purple. So myself, I have 2 staffers that are full-time. We have a part-time staffer. And then we have been really fortunate and blessed, Eugene, that we have a great intern program and a great volunteer program. So typically on any day, and because it's the summertime, we have 2 interns working full-time over the summer that come to us from Quinnipiac University, which has been a great resource. We've pulled interns from Sacred Heart and Fairfield U as well, but Quinnipiac seems to have had, we've really gotten some really good kids out of Quinnipiac University that have been in our intern program, and that's been kind of stable for us for the last 4 years, and we've done really well with kind of some niche interns. We had an intern do some data stuff that was a mathematics major and looking at like our participant data, our patient data, and then we've utilized the services of interns from Quinnipiac for our graphic design program to help with the marketing collateral. And then we are currently looking, and we have a job out on Indeed. We are looking to hire another part-time person for our third-party events. So eventually when the dust settles, we'll probably have 5 staff internally 3 full-time, 2 part-time. And then, you know, on any given week, I know we have a steady flow of volunteers, and that ranges from, you know, people. We have one volunteer. The lady's been awesome. She comes in once a week for the last 2 years to help out administratively. We've got a couple of high school kids that will be attending Woodland High School in Beacon Falls that have been with us for almost the whole semester, from like the spring and now into the summer, and then into the fall they'll be helping out. And then we've got a couple of volunteers that are helping out just like randomly, like once a month or twice a month. So it's really been great. I mean, the community, and those people are all local, has been really great. And we just recently moved from Beacon Falls to Seymour to a new office. So
yeah, you're on, what are you on, 115 Main Street, right? The former bank, is that where you are? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So amazing story. We had a little bit of an issue with our former landlord in Beacon Falls, and things didn't work out, and our lease was up. And, you know, we are, just because you're a nonprofit, you know, you still operate as a business. We still pay for rent and utilities.
I hear you.
I think people, you know, and so we had a bad landlord situation. We didn't have heat, quite honestly, Eugene, for 6 weeks. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, we had to make a very hard decision to leave when our lease was up. And, you know, everything happens for a reason. And one of our, you know, a guy that has been a big, you know, contributor to what we've been doing here in the Valley, James Zeppos, gets all the credit in the world, who owns Zoe's Pizza in Seymour.
Sure. Yeah.
He's been a big supporter. We've done the pizza eating contest, and that's coming back next year, by the way, for our listeners at home. We took a year off, and the reason is he and a couple of business partners purchased the 115 Main Street building, the old Bank of America in Seymour. And, you know, Jimmy, as I call him, you know, he's been a great piece of that Seymour community. I mean, he's been great to us, but I know he does a lot with the volunteer fire department there. He supports so many organizations, and, you know, he's done an amazing, his family has owned that business, I think, almost 50 years, and that building is beautiful. And they've invested their own money back into the community by what they've done with that building. And again, supporting all these nonprofits in the area. Excuse me. The building came up for sale. It's been for sale for a while, and he rallied some friends, and they purchased that building. And I really, you know, it's amazing. They're doing so much work with that building, you know, internally. It's going to be kind of a nexus for small businesses and, you know, professionals, kind of like I kind of, you know, traveling so much, and I was just at a WeWork. It's similar to like a WeWork where, you know, they're going to have these offices where you can rent, and, you know, these separate office units. And it's a great building. They're going to put a lot of money into the outside to beautify. And I mean, it's already a really great building, but, you know, he approached us back in March, beginning of March, and mentioned, hey, like, I'm potentially going to be purchasing this building. Would you consider moving? And I was like, you know, it's like,
Perfect.
I don't know, this perfect situation, because I didn't know, quite honestly, where we were going to go. We were looking at a lot of space across the area. We were looking in Hartford. We were looking in New Haven. We were looking in the Valley area, you know, and I live in Beacon Falls, and I prefer a short commute because I work so much. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of like, it was the perfect situation. It couldn't have happened, you know, and everything happens for a reason, as they say, and it really worked out really well. And
and so you're in there now, right? You're in there, okay. And you got things coming up in Seymour we should mention, because actually it's very timely, because you're having Food Truck Fridays. And it's
correct.
Tell me about that. There's one coming up July 27th. I'm going to try to we're recording this on the 25th. And I'm going to try to get up as soon as possible. But July 27th, your first Food Truck Friday in downtown Seymour. I love downtown Seymour, by the way. It's what a cool place to have an office, I think.
I think, you know, when I moved there, you know, we moved in April 1st, and it was like, you know, the midnight shuffle. Like we got a U-Haul truck, and we moved everything ourselves and moved everything in there. And I mean, I lived in Seymour for a short time with my wife when we moved up to the area for like 3 years, and downtown wasn't what it was today. And this was going back maybe 20 years ago. And like the first month, I was so occupied with like travel. So it took me a little while to kind of get out into the community. And what a really for our listeners at home, if they haven't come to downtown Seymour, what a really unique and really cool location and destination, because there's some really cool businesses, and there's some, hats off to whoever who, had the idea to make that kind of like, it's an antique mecca, but there's some really cool stores. There's the great cupcakes. You got Tickled Pink. You got Tea with Tracy. You've got some other eating venues in the area. And it really is kind of nostalgic to this like small downtown Main Street feeling. And so last year we had this idea, and I just love food, Eugene. I just love it. And that's probably why I have to run so much to keep off the food off my belly. But, we had this idea, and, food trucks is not something new. I think they've been around for quite some time, but, in Connecticut, it's kind of been this new thing over the last couple years. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this food truck idea. So we did it in Beacon Falls. We had 6 trucks from out of the area. And I mean, we had some amazing trucks. We had Milkcraft. We had, Pork and Friends from the Hartford area. I think they're from Middletown. We had Donut Crazy. We had all these we had the fireman's truck, which we even had the waffle bus come. And so we had all these unique food trucks. It was a little bit later in the year. It was it was actually Veterans Day, November 11th. So the weather was actually kind of cold. So I think kind of the ice cream truck didn't do as well, but it was just a great event. We combined it with some raffles that we did. And then we also had a cornhole tournament. So when we had a great success with it, and I said, you know what, we're going to do it again. And then we moved, and I was like, oh, wow, well, this actually plays out really a lot better location for us. We've got access. We've got parking lots now with the building. We've got the downtown scene. So we said, hey, why not? Let's do it again. So we're doing the big food truck event. We've got 6 trucks coming in October 27th. We're going to have cornhole. We might even have some live entertainment. I just got an email from a recording artist that wants to come. She's in between gigs, I think she's going to be in Boston beginning of the week, or beginning of that weekend, and then New York later. So she wants to kind of take a stop and likes the charity aspect of it.
Nice.
So that's to be determined whether we have live entertainment or not. But the other thing that we wanted to do, we were like, hey, let's lead into this. Let's really get people excited about food trucks. And so I said, you know what, let's pick a random Friday for the first, starting in August. We'll have one August, September, in October, or July, because we're in July, I'm sorry. So July, August, September, we're going to do a different food truck on a particular Friday. And you know what, this will be a great lead-in into, the big event in October. And the 3 food trucks that are coming are not even going to be in October. So it's totally given the community a different sense and a different feel for, food trucks, and not necessarily replicated food trucks that are going to be there in October. So I'm excited about it. We also, this Saturday, if this airs, we have a shredded event that we're doing. And so we have the parking lot there on 115 Main, in front. We're going to have a shred truck, and we're asking, for a minimal donation of $5 a box, or, whatever.
$10. It says $10 in your press stuff.
Okay.
Don't sell yourself short.
So it's $10 a box. Thank you for correcting me. And we have a food truck that morning as well, doing breakfast sandwiches. So we'll have the food truck this Friday, which is, I believe, the Cardo's egg truck.
Egg truck, yeah, and that's 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Friday, July 27th is the first food truck. And then you're having other trucks August 24th, September 28th, leading up to that great food truck fundraiser in October 27th. And the shredded event is Saturday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. this Saturday.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, that's really cool. Wow. You're doing a lot there, Dino. Well, let me ask you, because
we're trying.
We're talking sort of general and about a nonprofit entity, but tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school? How did you wind up in the Naugatuck Valley?
So that's a great question. So I grew up in Bridgeport, born and raised, and went to Notre Dame of Fairfield because when I was growing up in Bridgeport in the early 90s, late 80s, public school was just, wasn't as safe. And, the public schools aren't were not as good as they are today. And my parents being immigrants, one of the things that was really important to them was their faith. And so I grew up in the Roman Catholic faith and went to Roman Catholic parochial school. And then I think the easier transition, to high school was a Catholic high school, which was Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And then went to college in Rhode Island, small liberal arts school, Roger Williams. Lived in Boston for about a year, moved back to the area back in like 97, 98. And then worked actually in Shelton for quite some time for a company that maybe listeners might remember called American Scandia, and had a great career there. And then eventually left and went to another company down in Lower Fairfield County, which was in the financial services world. And then my wife ended up actually getting a job as a teacher in the town of Seymour back in 2001. And so we moved to Seymour in 2001, lived in Seymour for a couple years, as I mentioned before. And then we had the opportunity to kind of get a bigger house because we had children at the time, we were having children and starting a family. And we moved to Beacon Falls, and we've been there ever since.
And is your wife still a teacher in the Seymour School District?
She still is, going on 17 years.
Oh, no kidding.
Years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What does she teach then? What school is she at?
So she teaches at the new CLS. I say new. I mean, it's been a couple years that they combine Lopresti and Chatfield, and she currently is in the 5th grade.
And then your father was Giovanni. What's your mother's name?
Paula.
Paula.
And my mom still lives in the Shelton area. I mean, so I was born and raised in Bridgeport, and then
what type of work was what did your dad do for a living? They both were immigrants. Where'd they come from, and what type of what they do to support the family growing up?
Yeah, so my parents immigrated to the country in 1968 from Italy, and they came right from Italy to the Bronx. They were in the Bronx for a couple years, and then in 71 they moved to Bridgeport. And my dad was a laborer. My mom was a seamstress. She worked in the factories back in the 70s. Bridgeport was a mecca of the garment industry, believe it or not. For those listeners at home that maybe remember, or that are younger that don't remember, Bridgeport was really like a mecca for, all these factories where there were women, a lot of them immigrants, of various nationalities, Italian, Portuguese, Greeks, mostly that European area, like Eastern European and they, my mom was working in a factory. I remember as a little child, like going to the factory to just hang out with my mom, or, go say hi to friends or cousins. Like my aunt worked there as well, and multiple cousins, and they were just seamstress. They were making like, a lot of the garments that were worn back in the day. And then my dad was a laborer. He worked for Local 666, which is the laborers union out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. So for 35 years, he was a laborer, did a lot of masonry work, did a lot of carpentry, worked for various companies. The last company that he worked with is actually a Valley-based company, Francini Construction, which I think they're out of Derby, or they were out of Derby. And, it was just, he was my role model and my hero, Eugene. And
I was going to say, like, what'd you learn from him? And he must have been, it's got to be something for a guy comes from Italy, makes a new life in America, starts raising a family, is a laborer, and his son goes into this white-collar job, which is, was he supportive? He must have, like what'd you learn from him? What are some, like, lessons your dad taught you growing up?
Hard work, man. Hard work. There's no shortcuts for hard work, man. And, seeing my dad work 7 days a week, before he died, when I was younger, I would say, like he's always working because we need the money. And that was never the case. But I learned, shortly after when he got diagnosed, that it wasn't about the money. It was about being there for friends to help them. Because a lot of the weekends he was spent doing side jobs on his own. But you know what it was, though, Eugene? It was like he was helping guys put in decks, do stone walls, and teaching. I can't tell you how many guys at his wake that I remember meeting, like a lot of, there were a lot of firemen that he became really good friends with, Bridgeport firemen that used to do carpentry and masonry on the side as kind of their side hustle. And that's not uncommon, that these guys would be in the trades. Yep. And I remember like there was one guy in particular, and I remember like the last time I saw him was when I was little, and he helped my dad do our front stairs, and they were big. There were like 10 stairs to get to our house. And my dad taught him how to do that. And then the guy went on to do stuff on his own and have like his side hustle was carpentry. And, you know, it just hit me when the guy came to the wake. I hadn't seen him in like 20 years. And he said like, hey man, your dad taught me so much. And that's when it hit me and like, man, like, you know, dad wasn't about the money. It was about him helping other people and passing that trade on and passing those things on. So, you know, that's what I learned from my dad. It took me a couple years to realize that clearly, you know, not, you know, while he was alive, you know, I realized that as well, but it just kind of hit me right in the head when that guy came to the wake again, that's what it was about, like helping other people, you know, and working really hard. And
when did the idea gel to start Project Purple, essentially inspired, motivated, and in honor of your father? When did that?
It was probably in 2010 when my dad was re-diagnosed, and that we were incorporated in September of 2010. But so my dad was originally diagnosed in December of 2008. He was a surgical candidate, and then he was given like 6 months clear, you know, no evidence of disease. And then he was re-diagnosed in March of 2010. And that's when kind of things kind of went, you know, fast forward, you know, and then we were incorporated in September of 2010, but I was working on this like probably like in May of 2010. Like I was like, all right, we got to do something. Like I want to do something. And I think, you know, being an entrepreneur certainly helped, having a vision. And I think I'm more of a dreamer versus a realist. I mean, I think I am a realistic dreamer now. But at the time I was like, hey, we're going to do this. And, you know, a lot of people said you're crazy. And, you know, it's kind of funny, Eugene. Now when I consult, I get a lot of calls, and I'm not opposed to consulting with people that have had various life challenging issues and they want to do the same thing or replicate what we've done. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, no, don't do it, because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of sacrifice. But I'm being a realist, you know, and that's what I would tell anyone. And, you know, it's like, you know, if you're going to do this, just, you know, be realistic about, you know, the impact that you want to create, because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of sacrifices that I've had to make, you know, from a family perspective, from a personal perspective, you know, from an income perspective as well. You know, I mean, just because, you know, I was making
I assume you took money. I was going to say, I assume you took a pay cut from closing your own business to become the CEO of a nonprofit. Yeah. Yeah.
But money is not everything, but you also, there's a reality of it too, though, Eugene, is we run this as a business. So what's to say that we shouldn't pay our employees? Like, our employees have health insurance. We have a retirement plan. Like, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean that you have to skimp on those things. Now, we have a bigger emphasis on our return on our investment that maybe Bank of America has, because they're a bank and they're for-profit, or Apple. Like, Apple can write off, hey, the latest iPhone stinks and we didn't sell 1 billion units, and they can write off that loss, and, you know, they report to their shareholders. You know, for us, you know, it's a little bit more of a challenge. Like, we don't get a lot of do-overs, you know? And we have to really ensure that our investments, whether that's employees or whether that's, you know, these races that we get involved in, you know, that we, you know, make sure we get the proper return on those investments, because it's critical to the success of our organization.
All right. Well, Dino, I want to thank you for coming on this podcast with really no notice. I was exchanging emails with Sam from your organization, and I said, well, can you talk tomorrow? And then, even though you're in Chicago on the other side, or halfway across the country, you still made the time. And if our listeners want to learn more about Project Purple, a nonprofit born in the Naugatuck Valley and currently based on Main Street in Seymour, go to projectpurple.org. You can also find Project Purple on Facebook or Instagram, and you can access those resources and learn how you can join the fight against pancreatic cancer. So, Dino, again, thank you so much for your time.
Eugene, thank you for giving us and giving me the opportunity to share what we do, because without it, we wouldn't have the impact that we have. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Hundreds of years we brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation. public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day. Online clickbait, a prurient way. It's free information here to stay. Not even hookers give it away. Advertising, metastasizing, newsroom shrinking, constant attrition. We'll ride the dinosaur. We'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. An editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to you, funny pages, the mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance and we'll make an art stand. Just hold us in your hand and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.